so you think we're good? Katie? Okay. Katie, are we all set for recording?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all for coming here. I'm not intimidated or anything about doing this, because Rich John's sitting here in the audience, but, you're county legislator. So, you heard the opening statement before. I have about 25 questions here. We're gonna do the best we can to shake it up and cover a variety of topics. So, I think, we'll just kind of go, Wes, we'll just start with you on the first question, and come back with Aryeal. We'll try to mix it up here. Questions are, answers to questions will be 1 minute long. 1 minute long for each answer. If you have a rebuttal, do you each have a red card?
No, ma'am.
All the great planning, I don't know where the red cards were. Okay.
We just raise our hands.
Here we go, look at this. If you have,
Howdy ho.
if you wanna do a rebuttal, just wave one of these at me. And you get 30 seconds for a rebuttal. You're allowed to have only 2 rebuttals for the
whole
next-
evening?
For the whole next, like,
The
50
question,
minutes.
per question.
No, 2 rebuttals for the whole, like, we can't do 2 rebuttals for every question, so it's, like, pick your thing. If you
Oh,
really have to
question.
say something about one of the issues, and you wanna take one of your rebuttals, then go ahead. All right, and at the end, we will have closing statements for 2 minutes, yes, yes.
Was there a time constraint for the rebuttals?
30 seconds, okay? All right, and somebody out there will catch me if I've messed it up, all right? Okay, first question. I'm just gonna start with something near and dear to my heart. We have a housing crisis, and specifically with respect to people who are unhoused. What are some solutions that you think the city can and should implement?
I actually think it's fairly simple. The experts in our community, the Human Services Coalition, folks who have been on the ground, Catholic Charities have devised a plan, the Housing First Tompkins plan. It is very thought out, it's very thorough. Home Together Tompkins, that's the name of the plan. Housing First is the type of plan it is, which is to house people. It's maybe not a secret at this point now that I've been homeless a number of times. When I was 7 with my mom, escaping abuse, and right after I received my degree. Got my degree, was homeless. And that was defeating, especially when a lot of my peers were graduating and going off to DC and doing liberal arts grad degree holder things. And the thing that really helped me get off of the ground onto my feet was a Housing First program. And it was so successful that I got into the Housing First program, and 2 weeks later was able to get a job I was just talking about, where I ran an after-school program at an elementary school in Compton. And 2 months later, I noticed that our food in this transitional housing program was pretty subpar. And so I was like, you know what? I got y'all, don't worry. I know someone who works for Blue Apron, and I know that they throw out all their food. What if we made a deal so that the amount that you're paying for the loose materials that you're using to make this food that a lot of people aren't eating, a lot of people feel are unsafe, what if we use that to buy the surplus food from Blue Apron? Which is to say, Housing First works. It worked with me, it's worked with dozens of people, and I think it would work here in Ithaca.
And then we make sure you're watching Kathy with the time cards. Okay, thank you, Wes. Kris. Kris?
The Human Services Coalition of Tompkins County and the Continuum of Care have a Home Together Tompkins County plan that involves inclusive public space management, where drinking water, picking up trash, restrooms is actually provided for those in need. I believe that we need permanent supportive housing. We need help with navigation of housing and social services for the unhoused. We need the increased capacity at the emergency shelters. So Housing First, basic needs must be met first. The plan also includes trauma-informed care, harm reduction, and a housing surge to break through procedural delays. So that's all to say that I think we need to work with the continuum of care and their plan, which the experts in housing have put together. Thank you.
You keep going. You have
I
another
thought we
minute.
only had a minute each, that's why I got confused.
I'm sorry.
I'm
that's
pretty
right.
sure we have 1 minute
You got 1
each.
minute.
Oh, I was at 2.
That's right.
Well, maybe 2 for this question. Now that
Go ahead.
Anyways, I'm gonna just stop at that point. I was
Okay.
like, blah, blah, blah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, 1 minute for each one. Aryeal, take 2 if you need it.
Yeah.
So, this is something that's still evolving, right? We have drafts. We are great as a city at drafting things. We have a lot of different plans out there. The county has stuff going on. We have a lot of different organizations throughout the community that are all contributing in some way to trying to solve this problem that the whole country is grappling with. In Ithaca, we like to think that we can fix things, and we can, but we are not gonna be able to solve the complexity that comes with a human being trying to decide what they want and what they need and what they can do, right? So one size does not in any way fit all, right? For those of you who saw the PEDC meeting, Planning and Economic Development meeting from the other day, I think the most salient point that I took away about creating legislation going forward was something that Phoebe Brown said. She said that just because we don't doesn't mean we won't. There's very little power in the city of Ithaca of things we can actually do about social services because we don't have that control. It goes to the county. What we can do is craft our language in such a way that is very meticulous because that's where our social justice will come out of. What she meant was just because we don't enforce with police and bulldozing, as the word was used, of people in the encampments now doesn't mean that someone could come in after us and not do it, right? They could do it. So how we create these plans, how we make them concrete, the language is going to mean everything. Does that make sense? Like I think that's what's most important to me going forward as we write, because we have such a small amount of control in the city, believe it or not.
Alright, thank you, Aryeal. Alright, let's start with Kris, then Aryeal, then up to West. Ithacans are generally liberal and accept a high tax, big government model, but despite high taxes, Ithaca manages to run up yearly deficits, and we have a ginormous, spelled right, a ginormous unfunded liability for retiree health benefits. Our debt was recently downgraded, interest rates are not low anymore. What do you suggest the city do to get on sounder financial footing?
Well, I think look to the experts who are creating the budget at the city level, and we do have amazing experts who have worked for years creating budgets. I think we need to pick very carefully where our funding goes, and I think we need to have creative implementation of give me a minute. I think I'm gonna stop there. Yeah.
Alright, thank you. Aryeal.
So the popular answer is Cornell. That's the big, thing that we're all grappling with. And regular people have zero control over it right now. It's all taking place in City Hall. How we get creative with that negotiation. You can't come at Cornell, they won't just hand us money because they feel guilty. We need to find ways that we can have kind of a symbiotic relationship and they can feel like they're contributing and we realize that we need their support. So that's one of the ways, right, that we can help to build up our bottom line. There are inefficiencies that are kind of glaring, right? The communication between staff and elected officials in the mayor's office might seem simplistic, but if we're not communicating, if we're not executing things efficiently, if people in across the city are not updating their computers and the people from city clerk's office have to run around all day, it seems so simple, but these are the ways that we waste time, and time is taxpayer money. We can't get things accomplished if we are not efficient. So those are spaces where we can kind of to save some money here and there.
Thank you, West.
Yep, thank you. I do think that making Cornell is the popular opinion. but that's because I think that's what we ought to do. I resent, I think, inherently the idea that we don't have power as individuals. That's why I'm here, because I think we have power as individuals. And I think that, the many come together to David, the Goliath that is Cornell. When it comes to making Cornell pay, I think that there are few who have action plans. I think that the last successful person to do it was the DSA mayor of Ithaca, and I think that being a collective and bargaining with Cornell really takes manpower, people power, and it takes firmness. And I actually agree with Michelle downstairs that it's going to take a student Ithacan Native coalition.
All right, Kris, go ahead.
So I kind of lost it on that one, but I am a member of the negotiating team with Cornell, and I am going to fight for more and more millions of dollars to the city. And I believe that we have an opportunity to make change that is real and profound, and I certainly hope I can see this process through.
All right, start with Aryeal on the next one. The city had made bold decarbonization commitments with the Green New Deal. What do you see as your role in advancing progress towards these goals? And what Green New Deal initiatives would you prioritize in the first 6 months to a year in office?
So there was a resolution passed, obviously, that had a list of action items. Very few of those have been accomplished. The pandemic, of course, is a big player in that, but there are still a substantial amount of things that have not been done. In the mayor's budget this year, there was a lot of, well, we'll consider this, we'll consider this, we'll consider this, all the items that we're supposed to go through. We need to sit down and go through these items and what is attainable and what is doable, and actually put a due date on them, as simple as that sounds. What I would do is just pay close attention to, we need to talk to city staff, right? We need to sit down and have a conversation with the sustainability coordinator and see where they're actually at. Where's the planning department at? What are we actually going to do? Because it's a very fuzzy understanding. At every meeting, there's a fuzzy understanding of what actually is happening. So, I mean, the Sustainability Commission has met, well, this will be the second time in July. They met once in May. So we're only just getting that off the ground. So.
All right, Wes?
Yeah, I agree with Aryeal, and I look at things like the thousands and thousands of dollars that NYSERDA gave to TCAT to have electric buses and to electrify our buses, and then I look at our mistreatment of TCAT workers, our mistreatment of city workers, the lack of TCAT actually servicing our residents, and I see this chasm, right, where we want to be greener, but for whom and for what, and how are we going to do it? There is a bit of a timeline. I know that Southside is meant to be the first to get greenified, carbon neutral. But then I think about displacement. Like, what is that actually going to do for our for the Southside Community Center, one of the only cultural centers in Ithaca? I think that we ought to look at our people and then start looking at how we can affect the buildings.
Kris?
I met with Rebecca Evans, and according to her, the community choice aggregation plan is due in July and August, so we have no time to waste on that. I think we need to look for Justice 50 implementations, which primarily would be rent protections post-electrification. I think we need to look at why we're not already starting to retrofit our own buildings and prioritize how. The fleet is a major problem. By 2025, we need a 50% reduction in fleet emissions, and it's mid-2023, so we have no time to lose. I think also aggregation of purchasing and labor through block power is an option that will be fruitful for people and help with low-income homeowners. who will have access to funding that they are proposing, as well as the IRA.
And Aryeal, you have
Just a real quick additive. The concrete things that I would do is to work with residents in communication and connect them to the grants and the opportunities they have to reach their own green deals within their home and marry them with our goals. So there's a lot of outside support that they can utilize, and connecting them with that information is essential. We also need to worry about the fact that our former sustainability director left us. And as he was leaving, he shared with us that he was told that these goals were never meant to be met, that they were aspirational. So we need to make sure they're not just aspirational, that they're actionable, and that we're following through on what we started.
All right, back to us for the next question. Many homes and businesses in the city, especially in Ward 1 and 2, may be impacted by changes to the FEMA flood zone maps. In prior maps, most city properties were in the 500-year flood zone, but looks like many downtown properties will now be in the 100-year flood zone. Although the city has applied for funding that would mitigate the hazard, it's highly unlikely that this work would be completed before the need for flood insurance kicks in. What are your ideas for helping homeowners and business owners manage this impending financial burden?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the flood maps and worrying about the flood maps, I'm right by the river. Time is of the essence. The need for flood insurance is coming next year. The ability to build infrastructure that might mitigate that and might allow FEMA to redraw those flood maps is going to take longer than the time to get that flood insurance. And so folks are going to have to be able to pay, right? Folks are going to be asked to pay either way. If we're not able to get the Green New Deal in the timeline that we have now, like the idea that we can start mitigating these flood maps in time for FEMA to redraw maps is aspirational. So I really would like to see protections for low-income folks, low-income homeowners, really the people living in Ithaca from displacement with this given flood insurance. And maybe Ithaca, instead of giving tax abatements for luxury developments, can start giving tax abatements to low-income homeowners so that that price is being mitigated.
Kathy, you okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Too many signs to handle. Kris?
I would recommend that everyone watches the meeting from last night where Mike Thorne explained what the city is doing, so it's very helpful if you go to the Common Council meeting from last night. I have a really out-of-the-box idea about this one, and that is that we treat flood insurance like we treat our sidewalks, where the collective pays for those in need, and that we help offset the costs there. But furthermore, we need to take what we know into the neighborhoods, into where people are going to be most impacted, and offer assistance to people in their place. And again, I still think that some sort of redistribution of monies is one way out of the box that we could think about this.
Can you read the last sentence of the question? Sorry.
Although the city has applied for funding, it's highly unlikely this mitigation work would be completed before the need for insurance kicks in. What are your ideas for helping homeowners and business owners manage this impending financial burden?
Okay, so yes, definitely watched the meeting from last night. It was incredibly helpful. Everybody whose door I've knocked on, who's asked about this, has wanted this exact information. So it was really informative. Also, to add to that, a mailer went out. So all of you, if you're in the second ward, a mailer went out talking about resources, answering questions, a QR code to go to the website. I would encourage you all to go for sure. So watching last night, I learned a few things and I have questions about a few things, right? So the process will take years. Even the estimates that they're giving us of how long applying for a grant to do a study, to get a temporary letter that says based on what we might do, it might change the maps, and then we have to do the work, and then they have to tell us that we did a good job. So we're looking at 4, almost 5 years, best case scenario, right? because government slows down. I would like to see us find a way to streamline that process the best of our ability inside City Hall, so that time is mitigated. And if we can start planning for that now, it would be essential. My question to City Hall would be, can we not apply the maps once we get that provisional letter? Can we stall the process in any way to make sure that residents
Okay,
have
thanks, Aryeal.
some time to
Okay.
adjust?
I must have done.
I just started.
You started first, so Kris, we're on to Kris. Thank you.
Yeah.
Public safety, how would you go about rebuilding the Ithaca Police Department and achieving the aspirations of reimagining public safety?
So that's a big question, but I think the city is moving in the right direction after some time that has not been productive. I think looking to hire a new permanent police chief is one thing. We need to make sure that the officers in IPD are both diverse and well taken care of. And in terms of the goals of reimagining, I believe we need to go back to that original document with the 19 goals and really look again at that document and its implementation. We're still in the planning phase. We haven't implemented the goals of the reimagining public safety. I think this is an opportunity for us to do a reset.
Aryeal?
I feel very strongly that reimagining policing is not a good use of language these days. We need to reimagine the culture of what policing looks like, right? We need to be proactive, not reactive. So many cities across the country have had to deal with what happens if the worst happens, and then they have to compensate and fix and go back and look at. We should be planning to avoid those things. You take high blood pressure medicine so you don't have a heart attack. We should be treating it like that. Also, change is messy. Right now is an absolute disaster for multiple different reasons. Much people have made mistakes, mismessaging, all that stuff has happened. But we need to understand that change is messy, and what we want is a police chief coming in who's okay with messy, that knows that change is going to cause kind of chaos for a moment, and it is scary, but we can move forward and put everything back together. We need officers who want to stay because they're not afraid of change, because they're going to see it as an honorable thing. And we need people to come in who are okay with change being messy, right? If you tear apart a room to redo it, it's chaos for a minute, it's a little dangerous, but we have to put it back together one piece at a time.
What?
When I first think about the Reimagining Public Safety campaign, I think about the numerous meetings they had with Black leaders, Black community members, folks who were the impetus for creating a Reimagining Public Safety campaign to weigh in. And then I look at the new plan and I say, where did those opinions go? And so first and foremost, let's actually involve the folks who might be most affected by what we're trying to reimagine. Then I think of the statement of rebuilding, and first and foremost, what I want for the Ithaca PD is to be demilitarized. I think that this community does not need officers with AKs walking around. I have a friend who lives right around the block, and every time I see it, my heart jumps, and I'm like, ah, you know? And so then I think, what can we do to mitigate the need for IPD? And that's when the community comes into place. That's when us connecting with one another, us taking our own safety, because we're a small enough community that we can keep each other safe in many ways.
Thank you. Aryeal, start the next one. What's your opinion of the current zoning ordinance in Ithaca? If you think it should be changed, how?
The zoning ordinance, which one? There are multiples in
Just
every
read the
different
questions.
area. Could you be more specific?
All right, what's your opinion of zoning currently? How would you
Martha.
change it?
I will talk about one, okay, so let's talk about one instance of zoning, right? I guess I'll just pick a place because that's, okay. So I was recently reading about the missing middle housing, right? So townhouses, duplexes, even triplexes, small things you can tuck into neighborhoods like the Second Ward that fit in beautifully, that would be available for seniors who want to retire in place, but don't want a giant house and don't want to pay the taxes, for a substantial amount of single parents out there, for that niche in between needing affordable, like quotes, and being able to buy a $500,000 house, right? Or a student in a high rise. The problem becomes, we have antiquated zoning around that. There are parking requirements, and there is financial requirements that make it unattractive for a lot of developers to come in. So how as a city can we fill this missing middle of housing in such a way that provides more for a particular set, but it all will come down in this case to how we zone the area. Okay, Wes, pick something.
Yeah, in addition to the parking requirements, I think that we should also not stop having single-family home zoning, but also have zoning that allows for multifamily homes, that's going to allow for multiple people to be in a single house, that will allow people to be housed, which, again, housing first. I think zoning is complicated, and I appreciate Aryeal's. But when it comes to Ward 2, Ithaca is gorgeous. And I think that when we try to keep Ithaca as beautiful as it can be, then we really start to stick to ideas that are harming our community. I would like to see more things like Hancock Place, which, in my opinion, looks hot, looks gorgeous, you know, and like is housing people. That's hot. Period.
People almost went to blows over that.
I bet.
Okay,
I can only imagine.
I'd like to see ADUs used for opportunities for, like Aryeal said, elders to live with families and community, and as another option for dealing with unhoused people. And I also think inclusionary zoning does provide benefits for affordable housing and money into the Community Housing Development Fund. So I think that our, if you look at Austeri downtown, I like what happened with that inclusionary zoning there, where the affordable housing is brought into the city core, and that all of the services in some senses are close by. And leave it there.
Okay. All right, we're gonna give you a break here, and the next one is, what's your favorite local store? What's your favorite movie? And what song do you like to dance to?
Honestly, I have so many business
You
owner
know,
friends, like this
sorry,
is makes me start to
drumming.
sweat. Hair color art.
Pandering.
Honestly, favorite local store. I go in there often to bother the hairstylist. I've gotten my haircut only twice. I've been there upwards of 20 times. Favorite movie? It will have to be a tie because rules, what? Between Rent and oh God, now I forgot it. I guess it's not true. Fifth Element, I haven't forgotten it. Thank you. What was the last one?
What song do you like to dance to?
I'm a DJ, so that's also hard. I would say, Shaka Khan.
Kris, store, movie, dance.
Okay, so my favorite store is Odyssey Bookstore, and I'm going to turn the question around and say what my favorite book is, because I don't really have a favorite movie. And I read a book called Lost and Found, which won the Pulitzer Prize, and I loved it. It's an amazing book. And music to dance to when my kids were really small and we were homebound in the winters. We used to do Mamma Mia dance parties. Yeah. And that kept us occupied for quite a long time. So every time I think about that, I smile. So I'd have to say Mamma Mia.
Store, I will pander a little bit too. We will call it an outdoor store if murals, right? I got you, I'm with you. No, but honestly, Sweet Melissa's has had the most amazing and beautiful trajectory since I moved here. From just like soft serve to Melissa making her own ice cream to her, opening multiple stores and experimenting. They're just really beautiful humans. and I appreciate them pretty much every day in the summer. Movie, I'm gonna be a rebel and say TV series, we just finished up Ted Lasso, must watch for anybody, very inspiring, very funny, have to watch that. And music to dance to, I mean, I live with a DJ, so that's complicated, but the boys and I really got into New Orleans jazz music this year. So Trombone Shorty and John Baptiste and all the good second line stuff. That's been really fun to dance to John Baptiste's Freedom. It's been great.
Thank you. All
We
right.
do more questions like that.
That's a
More
one.
questions like this.
Okay.
I think we'll have to answer questions about like the
We'll see what I got.
acronyms, like
Alright.
the pilot and like secret. I think that's going to.
All
be a
right,
quiz.
back to stuff. Okay, walking and biking are low emission forms of transportation that promote health and social connection. What would you as a council member do to support and make easier more trips taken walking and biking instead of by car in Ithaca? Kris.
Well, we need streets that are maintained and safe. We need, biking pathways. I think Aaron Cudahy recently got an enormous, grant for a transportation plan, I can't remember the exact name, that really maps out what our streets, block by block, can do to support walking and biking as alternate forms of transportation. I think Fernando D'Aragon told me that most car trips in this city are under 2 miles. So having safe streets, that means thinking about how we're dealing with parking cars along streets so that biking is actually safe. Okay, 10 minutes, 10 seconds, I'll stop. I get so distracted by the
This
signs.
is not possible to answer this unless you use like, this is.
I'm sorry you got 1
Anyways.
minute, Aryeal, go.
That's fine, I'm just saying. Leaving a lot on the table. Alright, so we'll go with talking points. The city is already looking to lower the speed limit and they're doing stuff related to that. We need to, this is fun, when Line Bikes came out, there was a lot of, let's say, biking NIMBYism. People who were avid bikers and they knew how to do it, but those people didn't know how to do it and they didn't have helmets and they didn't know the rules. So Line Bike is bad, so we shouldn't do that. That was a concern, and if we want people to use bikes more and to walk more, we probably need to be a little bit more understanding, compassionate, patient, and inclusive. Yeah, I'll give it up, because I don't know what else I would say, it's gonna take a long time. Streets, we had a street crew, we paid for them, they weren't hired yet, pandemic happened, we lost the street crew, and now we don't have money for a street crew. So we almost had better roads, and then we had a pandemic. There you go. That's my 30 seconds.
Yeah, I used to work for the Center for Community Transportation, which has led our transportation equity assessment and has been meeting for many times. Included in the CCT is also Bike Walk Tompkins, which is an advocacy group and awesome nonprofit filled with awesome people doing awesome things. Aryeal's right. I've had someone walk to our office and yell at me at how bike share is a bad idea and you shouldn't have it here. And yet I've seen it do a lot of good. I would like to add just really quickly as well, when we're talking about the walking and biking conversation, we need to include buses. Because when we're asking people to walk more and bike more, we ought to have buses that can connect them with bike or connect them by walking or bring them to places that are short, like the car ride. And because car share is a part of that as well, like I do know, and Fernando's the board president for the CCT, we need to fix the streets. We need to fix our sidewalks. I have a nasty bruise that was caused by me flying forward, trying to avoid a car that was going way too fast on Cascadilla Street, which I kind of want a flashing red stop sign at one of those corners. But I can go on forever, much hesitation.
Thank you. All right, to Aryeal. How well do you know the people in Ward 2 and the City of Ithaca? What skills and local experiences do you have that you believe qualify you to serve the more than 6,000 residents of Ward 2?
Lordy, there's over 2,500 registered Democrats, I think. I have knocked on doors in that ward and across the city for so many different campaigns. I pretty much I know a lot of them. I have met teachers, I have met yoga instructors, I have met incredible community members. Just listening to their stories, I feel like I have this base of knowledge of their stories and their perspectives on what they would like to see happen, what their concerns are, in a way that a lot of people don't, because I have knocked on doors all over the city and very heavily in our community. So I think that knowledge, because you're supposed to work for the people, right? You're not supposed to go in and just do what you think is best. You're supposed to respond to what they need and what they want, and that maybe not always line up perfectly with your preferred method, but that's why we're there, is to figure out a way to work together as a unit to meet the needs of everybody without losing the thread. Thank you.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time knocking on doors as well, and I work in the school system, so I happen to know a lot of young, soon-to-be voters, and then their parents. But to Aryeal's point, as a part of the Solidarity Slate, I get to hear from and I get to legislate from a place that is based on the community. Folks who are coming to DSA meetings, folks who are in the ITU, which is citywide, but lots of Ward 2, and folks who are part of the Working Families Party. So I'm inherently, were I to be elected, going to be speaking for a large swath of Ward 2, and not at all my self-interests. Including my self-interest, because I'm included in some of those.
I've lived in Ward 2 for 25 years and I've raised my children there. And I've been involved in many community organizations. I was the secretary for the Green Star Council, Green Star Board. I work for the Ithaca Community Gardens. They're on their board. I've taught in 3 different schools, and I've worked with many, many families in our community, and I would say that I feel pretty well connected to the people of Ward 2.
Just a question, are we allowed to ask questions of other people? If that counts as a rebuttal?
I might not answer.
Sally Grubb thought of almost everything, but not that.
Fine rebuttal.
Go ahead,
So I
say
can-
what you're gonna say, I don't know that anybody.
So as a constituent of Ward 2, this is a question for West. The slate, this is just my understanding, is that the slate it votes as a unit, they all vote in lockstep. If there's something for the second ward that doesn't fit with the plan for the greater city, I'm talking about like there's a disparity and the slate wants to vote for X but would not serve our ward, what would you do?
I can imagine something that the slate, which involves people from all wards, voting for something that is detrimental to Ward 2, is my answer.
But that's fine. I was just curious.
I was just doing that in 20 seconds.
I'm good. I was just genuinely curious as a
We're improvising.
resident.
Yeah.
Join the coalition.
So
I'm a bit of an
Wes, we'll
individualist.
start with you for the next one, and, we're getting close, we're gonna do, we'll do closing statements for the end. Regardless of the outcome of this election, in 5 years' time, what roles do you see for yourself in Ithaca? How do you see yourself contributing to the community? Where do you think you'll be in 5 years?
Wow, I'll be 35. Chuckle. I think regardless of community, I can see myself in grad school. I can see myself having finally started LGBT center here in Ithaca. I can see myself maybe being a foster parent. You're making me think about far into the future. And I hope that with reimagining public safety, and I hope I am surely one of the lowest of income folks here, and so hopefully I'm not pushed out.
Kris?
I hope I will still be in Ithaca, not pushed out, and if, regardless of whether I win this election or not, I'd like to join you in the LGBTQ Center. That sounds like a great plan. I will be here as a member of the community, just like I am now in 5 years, and not ready for grandkids, I'm not that old, so, but I will be doing much of what I do now, which is to talk to my neighbors and walk the streets and serve in any community organization that could use my services.
Aryeal?
One of my favorite things that I've done over the last almost 10 years of working with candidates and attending meetings, that's where I first met you, has been allowing people to have access to the ballot, right? The first time that I ran, it was this mountain that I didn't know because I wasn't on the inside, right? And you can't climb the mountain if you don't even know where to start. So I want to continue, and I will be continuing to be a connector, right? To still be lifting people up who don't have access to the basic abilities like to run for elected office. So I'm still going to be helping people to understand each other. I'll also be pushing the edges of, racial and social justice issues through the election of community leaders of color, and that's just something that's passionate to me, is to making sure that if you want to run, you know how, you know the process, you know who to talk to. I think that's a beautiful thing here and across the country, right? You want to run? I'll get you there.
Thank you. To Kris. With competing priorities constantly evolving in Ithaca, I mean, we all want everything done yesterday. What are your top 3 priorities and initiatives, policies, or focus areas that you hope to advance during your term on council?
I would say we know we need affordable housing. We know that we need to have neighborhoods where people feel safe and welcome and included, and so I think we need to go back to looking at reimagining public safety. I think we need infrastructure, that we need to really focus on infrastructure, the aging infrastructure of our city. And we cannot, if you look out the window the past few days and you hear about the flood maps, we cannot let the changes that are happening in our climate pass us by. And if there's anything that makes me really committed to running, it's, I want Ithaca to be here for my kids and for all of us. And we need to all do our part.
Aryeal?
So, the talking points on a palm card, right? And reimagine the culture of policing. Implement Green New Deal initiatives. Add safe and quality housing. So those are the top ones. But what people don't often realize when they're thinking of the things, we want to do the Green New Deal. We have no idea what that looks like. To execute what the parameters are. We can't get anything done unless we start to untangle the absolute disaster in City Hall right now that's happened over the last couple of years. None of these issues can be started, sorted out, or done if we don't get this stuff organized. If we don't have people who can go in there, pull apart the thread because they know how it should and could work, and to really start sussing out the situation. We need people. We need them to have stability and respect. I've heard from a lot of city employees, even in the second ward, that don't feel stable. They feel insecure, they feel out of sorts, and they're just trying to keep their heads down and not make any sudden movements, and that's no environment to get anything accomplished in. We can't have a climate action plan come out of the planning department if they're too afraid to move, right? So as semantic and as it is, I think that that's where we have to start before any of these pretty shiny things can be accomplished.
Affordability is going to be huge. We talk about living in Ithaca for years and knowing our neighbors, but if we have a turnover rate that allows nothing to change, then what are we doing this for? Who are we doing it for? Public safety, and I think that Tangle aside, in 2 years on Common Council, not only can I bring my voice to the council for progressive issues, but I can organize and help organize the residents in the ward. And then I would say 3, infrastructure, and looking at infrastructure being not only making the sidewalks feel smooth, but getting bike lanes in, beginning to mitigate the flood issues. Some of these issues aren't as separate as they are being espoused to be.
You've already had 2 of those.
For the whole thing, you only get a certain amount total?
2. And you
Well, I didn't know that there was a specific amount of time, it's okay.
All right, we'll start with you on the next one though. Aryeal. Right.
Did Kris just go? Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually just wondering where we're at in questioning and
I'm gonna do
debates.
two more questions and then your closing statements.
Okay, great, thank you.
How do you think the city manager position will change everything in the city? How do you think it will change common council's role, common council's relationship with the mayor, and any other comments you have about how the
How do I
manager?
think it will, or how do I want it to? Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry, these are big questions. This is really important, and this is one of the biggest reasons that I'm running, is we have this moment in time where we can shift some of the dynamic, and Lord knows we need it. I would like to see common council be more assertive, right? I'd like the power dynamic to shift. I would like them to be able to have a better relationship with city staff. They were committee of the whole last week. They were talking about the different roles, beautiful slides. And one of the points they did not get to, but in theory they will, was the difference between the mayor's role now and the city manager's role, right? And one of them was the city manager will be involved in union negotiation stuff, but common council will not. Now, right now, we've got somebody, George McGonigal, as being a liaison, but going forward, that literally is the exact thing that the whole community just came out and said, can we not do that? Because you need to know what's happening in between. So, a city manager is brilliant. I think this idea has been great. I've been following it for years. We need to make sure that the legislative end does not get lost in the shuffle, which is what often happens and has happened previously.
Thanks, Ariel. Wes?
Dignity and respect for workers is a major value of mine and tenet. You'd imagine that giving people who help run our town dignity and respect would not be as difficult as mitigating our flooding or fixing our streets, but it seems to be. I'm hoping that the city manager takes the need to listen to our city workers, listen to what they're saying about their struggle, and see that what the city workers are saying actually is just pretending what might happen to all low-income Ithacans. And so, were I to be on council, I certainly would try to shift away from the tendency to care more about businesses. And if that were to ruffle any feathers, I hope the city manager would help mitigate that as well.
I think the city manager is a great opportunity to find someone with experience in leading a large organization. So there are 400 employees and a budget of 80 million. And not everyone who's elected to office has the capacity or the skills or the training to be a manager of an organization that size. So I have great confidence that hiring a really good city manager will in fact help with communication and will help with the need for transparency, which I think we all agree we need transparency in government. And I think that the city manager will be instrumental in making that happen.
Okay, starting with Kris.
I think
No,
it's Wes.
I think
starting
I'm
with,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And West, what question do you wish we'd asked tonight? What topic do you think we should have covered that we haven't?
Wow, that's good.
Or if you think, I made this one up, so.
No, I appreciate it. I'm
Well, so I
combing
can
in my mind.
edit it right now, which is to say, what would you like to, pick a topic you'd like to say something more about, I guess.
Yeah, I think that we've danced around our low-income population. I think that we've danced around folks who aren't meeting this, again, wealthy elite cap. I'd love to have talked about the needs of Black Ithacans. I'd love to have talked about the needs of disabled Ithacans. I'd love to have talked about the needs of LGBTQ Ithacans. We just lost. Okay, I'm actually gonna start crying. I can't do that. I'd like to talk about the needs of Ithacans who aren't on the website and aren't imagined when they talk about Ithaca, but are here and have been here for years and have been pushed out from places that are their homes like Southside and relegated to spaces like Westside and then not given resource and support, and then get upset about when they are unhoused and in need and are more in need.
That's a really good question, and I think if I didn't want to actually talk about this, but I kind of wish you'd asked about it, and that is that the unsanctioned encampments, because I feel like we have a responsibility to really explore what it means to share land, and how we do that and how we treat the most vulnerable is critical to how we operate as a city. So, like I said, I didn't want to answer that question, but I do kind of wish we'd all weighed in on it.
I don't think I have an answer. I wish that we had time to drill down on some of the minutia in these situations, because the goings on in City Hall are so much more complicated than just going in and saying affordable housing is necessary. Mm-hmm. Most people have no idea what it actually looks like to facilitate, invite, encourage, and curate affordable housing in the city. They don't know what the AMI is, right? The average median income. They don't know what the requirements are for building. They don't know what the cost of a 2x4 is. They don't know the state funding relationship. So understanding these details is so important, and it's frustrating, and it's annoying, and it's not sexy. But knowing what we can do and having the expectations that people have for us, there needs to be a solid understanding of how we get there. I want to be able to say to you, yes, we're going to do everything we can to get more housing stock in general. And this is the capacity in which me and the people on the committee that I'm on can actually achieve this thing. So what can we do to create that? So
Okay.
I'd like to be able to have the more meat.
All right. We are at a real quick then, a lightning round. Name a national or international leader whom you admire. Start with Wes.
National or international leader that I
Public figure.
admire.
Real quick.
Desmond Tutu.
Okay. Kris.
Wow. That one's tough, but I have to say, Zelensky is pretty amazing.
I feel like such a simpleton. Katie Porter and her whiteboard.
We went to the same high school.
Did you also hang out with Elizabeth Warren in college? But no, Katie Porter and her freaking whiteboard are
Yes.
inspirational.
All right, thank you all very, very much. We have time for 2-minute closing statements for each of you. Yes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
2 minutes,
2 minutes,
okay?
okay.
And I really want to thank everybody for coming, for being here, and especially for all of you who have. So we'll do a reverse alphabetical order because, you know, Robertson's usually at the end of the order. So we're gonna start with Aryeal.
In my opening statement, I noted that we don't just need taglines, we need plans. My campaign believes that we can reimagine the culture of policing, we can implement Green New Deal initiatives, and we can add safe and quality housing for everyone. However, we can't do that if we don't elect someone who understands how to accomplish these things. I've interviewed, researched, listened, and learned from numerous elected officials, county and city staff, and community members. I've treated my civic engagement like a required course. As many of you know, I ran for council in 2017, and I wasn't a well-known name, and I certainly couldn't overcome party politics. But I do remember my answer to one question during a forum just like this. We were asked how we would handle a budget decision. My answer was simple. We can't assume how we would protect the valuable tax dollars of our neighbors until we sat in the room and understood the process. Well, now I know the process. I've sat in the room and I understand it. I know that GIAC has a wait list for their after-school program, a program that is shown to lower food insecurity, build self-esteem, and provide hope for the future. I know that we have 5 authorized housing inspectors and only 3 positions funded. A simple detail, but one that could be contributing to unsafe housing. These are the details an alderperson needs to know right now to make informed decisions on your behalf. And I'm confident that I can make educated and sound choices from my ward and our city. You see, to be invested in our city is to understand it. We can't afford to guess or to govern based on political lines. On June 27th, you'll get to vote for the candidate you believe will achieve goals we have set for ourselves. You can believe in me, and you can trust that I have the knowledge, experience, and insight that are so essential in this moment in our city's history.
Thank you. Kris?
Thank you for having us here today. It's clear to me that we each want what's best for our city, its residents, and its workers. Thank you, Aryeal. Thank you, West. These are challenging times, and I believe the way forward is through unity, not division and not polarization. To overcome the many obstacles we as individuals and as a community face, we need to recognize our shared aspirations for our neighbors and our city, and acknowledge that we have a collective responsibility to work for the good of all. It is my firm belief that the process we are engaged in here should be a force for progress, a means to uplift the lives of others. The political process, debates, campaigning, they're not about personal gain or party allegiance. They are about serving the people who have placed their trust in us. As your alderperson, I will advocate for justice and be a voice for those who have been marginalized. I know words can't solve all the challenges we face. They must be met with action, with tangible policies that address the needs of our community and foster an environment of inclusivity. I am committed to the uncomfortable process of change and reflection to work for the good of all residents and city workers. It's time to listen, de-escalate, and take action. Our nation is polarized, our state is polarized, and Ithaca, where many of us are on the same side, is polarized. Change begins with us. I believe firmly that empathy and understanding and listening and reflecting builds bridges instead of walls and cooperation instead of conflict. My work as a teacher and administrator gives me experience I draw upon.
It's late.
I believe that any Ithacan can sit on Common Council, and I think that any Ithacan who has the gumption to do so, which all 3 of us certainly do, is prepared. I think that when we say that folks need to have a certain type of experience, a certain pedigree, that those are the impediments that stop low-income people from being able to represent themselves, Black people from being able to represent themselves, disabled folks from being able to represent themselves. I happen to be in a special category in which I both have the marginalization and lived experience and the pedigree, so I can stand tall knowing that I do have the experience and I do have the ability to run a Common Council, but not many in this community have that, have the certain lattice of experiences that I have. I also think that it's important that when we think about Common Council, right, and I've done some combing and done some research, my degree's in philosophy, so I'm used to reading 80, 120 page papers that are long and dense and complicated to understand, that for the last decade, Common Council has had priorities for business owners, priorities for the wealthy, this sort of trickle-down understanding of how we might solve some of our social inequalities. And I think it's time for us to put someone on council who just absolutely does not believe that, and who, one, is very willing to learn, but also is in coalition with folks who have known the community for years, in coalition with folks who are going to inform them about what their constituents need, and not just an understanding of what we think is happening because of our years of being in a single vantage point.
Thank you, Wes. All right, I just think this has really been a wonderful experience for me. I really appreciate all of you being here and doing all the hard work. And I know everybody in this room is gonna vote, but make sure you tell your friends, your neighbors, and that this really matters. You know, local elections are where, you really can make a difference. And
Make sure you check your voter registration.
make sure you